Hey everyone, today we're going to discuss about the testing the significance of the Pearson product moment correlation coefficient. So in our last lesson, we've learned how to solve for the value of the correlation coefficient R. So yun yung medyo mahaba-habang formula. Now, we're going to test kung yung correlation ba nila is significant. So, we say the significance of the correlation coefficient must be tested in order to determine if the relationship between the two variables exists in the population. So, ang ibig sabihin natin when we test the significance is check ba natin is if importante ba yung relationship na meron sila. Kasi we can assess the strength of relationship from zero, negligible, hanggang very high to perfect yan, di ba? Baba pataas. So, if, dito sa testing the relationship, testing the significance, importante bang tingnan natin yung relationship na meron dun sa correlation coefficient to suggest any important statistical analysis. So, yun. Now, to determine the significance of the correlation coefficient R, we make use of the t-test for testing the population correlation coefficient. So the test statistic is this one. So t equals r over square root of 1 minus r squared over n minus 2. So r is the correlation coefficient, n is the sample size, df is the degrees of freedom, where df is equal to n minus 2. So this is a t-test. So basically, we're going to use the t-distribution table. Also, if you check here, iba yung degrees of freedom natin. We use n minus 2 instead of the usual n minus 1. Okay, so we have to be careful for that. Sige, let's have an example. A psychologist wants to determine if there is a relationship between the average number of hours of sleep of a person and its perceived stress level. So, assuming the stress level is measured on a continuous scale, the data is presented in a table below. Test the significance at 0.05 level of significance. So, ito yung number of hours ng tulog, average. Ito yung stress level on average. So, first, we state the null and alternative hypothesis. So, ang hypothesis natin dito, first, yung null hypothesis. Remember, kapag null hypothesis, the parameter is equal to the hypothesis value. So, hindi sila magkaiba. Okay? So, there's no significant relationship between the average number of hours of sleep and its perceived stress level. So, yun. So, walang observable. Kasi pantay lang. Pag alternative, may observable value kasi nagdi-deviate siya from what is normal. So there's a significant relationship between the average number of hours of sleep of a person is perceived stress level. So that's our first part. State the null and alternative hypothesis. Step 2, we identify the appropriate test to be used, the type of test, and the critical value at a specified level of significance. So, i-check natin kung significant yung relationship. So, to determine kung significant yung relationship, we use the t-test for testing the population correlation coefficient. Ang t-test na to is a two-tailed test. So, level of significance, 0.05. Ayan. Basically, lagi tayong two-tailed pala kapag dito sa t-test na gantong version. Okay? So, to determine the critical value, we solve for the degrees of freedom. df is equal to n minus 2. In this case, n equals 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And kasi hindi pabilangin din itong kabila kasi perceived na for each participant, itong dalawa yung meron. Tulog pati yung stress level nila. So, 6 participants lang po talaga sila. Okay? 6 minus 2, 4. And we have a two-tailed test at 0.05. We look at the column of 0.95. So, 4, anong corresponding value niya? 2.776. So, the critical values are positive, negative, 2.776. Two-tailed, so positive, negative. Step 3. Now we will solve for the value of the correlation coefficient R. So, gagawin ulit natin yung medyo mahaba-habang equation. I know, medyo mahaba talaga siya. So, let the average number of hours of sleep as X, perceived stress level as Y. So, we input the values right here. Ito si X. Ito si y. We construct the column for x squared. So, kunin mo yung values ni x. Take the square root. So, I'll leave it up to you to compute, and to double check the values. Basta itong x squared na to, yun yung squared ni x's. Y squared, kunin mo yung values ni y. Take the square. Ito yun. Square nyo lang. Yan yung mga values na yan. xy, get the value of x and y, multiply 5 times 3 times 5.3 times 5.2, 27.56. So, ito yung mga yan. Okay? Then, we compute for the summation of each of the values. For x, we have the summation of x is equal to 38.2. Summation of y is 29.9. Add lang natin itong mga values na to. Add nyo to. We get 38.2. For y, add nyo lang lahat. We get 29.9. For x squared, add nyo lang lahat. We get the summation of x squared as 255.56. For y squared, add nyo lang lahat. It's 166.01. And xy, add lang lahat. Summation of xy, 176.81. So those are the summation of values of each column. Now that we have the summation of values of each column, we compute for the correlation coefficient R. So we use the formula, yung medyo mahabang formula. N is 6. Summation of xy is 176.81. Summation of x, 38.2. Summation of y, 29.9. N, again, is 6. Tama naman so far. Summation of x squared, 255.56. The square of summation of x, so that's 38.2 squared. N is 6 again. Summation of y squared, 166.01. The square of summation of y is 29.9 squared. So we compute for the values, we will end up with negative 0.94. So that's our value of R. Now, in interpreting this value, remember yung scale nan, this is a negative. So negative correlation, 0.94, it lies within the very high correlation. So negative 0.94, this suggests that the correlation is a very high negative correlation. Okay? So test natin, importante bang i-check natin yung correlation na yun? Is there a significant relationship between the two variables in that case? So to do that, we test it using this test statistic. So t equals r over square root of 1 minus r squared over n minus 2. So r is negative 0.94, n is 6. So substitute the values right here. Then we'll end up with the value negative 5.51. So that's our test statistic. So anong purpose ng test statistic natin? We'll use this to determine if we're going to reject the null hypothesis or not. Remember, paano ba natin ginagawa to? We construct a normal curve. Normal curve, remember, ang critical value natin is negative 2.776 and positive 2.776. We plot where negative 5.51 is right here. So it is in the rejection region. So this means that we reject the null hypothesis and consider the alternative hypothesis. So ano yung null hypothesis natin? Remember, balikan natin Ano yung null hypothesis? It's right here. There's no significant relationship, so we reject that. We consider that there is a significant relationship. So there's a significant relationship between the average number of hours of sleep of a person and his perceived stress level. So, yan. So, ibig sabihin lang nun, may relationship yung tulog ng isang tao at yung stress level niya. And the relationship between the two variables are significant enough to suggest a statistical analysis na observable siya na hindi lang siya nangyari by chance, but rather it's a good thing, maganda siyang i-observe and back up siya by statistics na importante yung relationship niya dalawa. Basically, that's what it means to have a significant relationship. So there are other examples here. Please try answering, okay? Importante ito kay correlation analysis is ma-practice kasi maraming ginagawa dito. Yung next lesson natin na regression analysis, mas lalong madaming ginagawa dun. Okay? So, it's not enough to determine the relationship between the two variables. It's also important to determine if the relationship between the two variables is significant. If the relationship between two variables is significant, then it suggests that one variable affects the other and it is likely that this did not happen by chance. So, isang tinetest din natin yun eh. Nangyari ba siya by chance or not? So, that's it for our lesson. So, I hope you guys learned a lot today. Thank you guys for watching and see you guys on the next video.